Welcome back to TECHMIMIC, where you can simply view, imitate, replicate, and get on with your day. If there is a particular Windows application, or maybe a game, you can't live without, it might certainly be possible to run it on Linux. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to run Windows applications on Linux. This time on Linux Mint 22, but it will be fairly similar to anything Debian or Ubuntu-based. Playing around with running Windows applications on Linux over the years, at least in my personal experience, has been a hit or miss. With the introduction of PlayOnLinux that serves as a wide front end, things became much easier and especially much more manageable. PlayOnLinux is available in the Ubuntu repositories. Besides Ubuntu, it is also available on most major Linux distributions, including Fedora and Arch Linux. Once it is installed, it will be fairly similar to what is shown in the next few minutes. In the spirit of today's topic, I will avoid opening the text-based terminal and we will do everything graphically. This is a freshly installed system and we will start completely from scratch. Keep in mind that a lot of things will be installed or will be run for the first time upon initial setup, meaning that if you have another Windows application to install, the process will go faster the second time around. As a first example, I'm going to install the text editor Notepad++ that is only available for Windows. We will manage everything through PlayOnLinux, including the download itself, and for the second example, I will install a Windows application, WinSCP in this case, for which I have downloaded the setup program myself, so we will have to run the installation manually. For starters, both Windows applications are fairly simple, and I think this will yield the best results. But maybe that's all you want, a simple application. Don't expect Adobe Photoshop to work 100% like for like on Linux, like it would on Windows, without any additional setup. I will now show the process step by step, with some additional information along the way. Also the integration between the Linux system and the Windows application, once the application is installed, which has gotten better and better over the years. As always, it is a good idea to update the system, especially because this system has just been installed only a few minutes ago, and there will be a couple of updates available. Open the menu and find Administration and then Update Manager. I will ignore the message about switching to a local mirror and simply click Install Updates and accept any further packages to be installed. After a few moments, the system will be updated. Obviously, the amount of packages to be downloaded and installed will all depend on your specific situation. In my case, I also had to restart the machine. Once you are updated, it's time to head to your distribution software center or app store. In the case of Linux Mint, this is called Software Manager. Search for PlayOnLinux. Study the details if you want and click Install. Accept all the additional software that will be installed and wait a few more moments. Once done, close the software manager. As a precursor, for what it's worth, don't compare the way of doing things here with how simple it is to just download Notepad++ and install it on your Windows 11 laptop, because you will only frustrate yourself. Let's start by navigating to the Accessories section and pin PlayOnLinux to the panel. Now we have a shortcut going forward. Start PlayOnLinux and let it load and refresh for a few moments. The version used in this video is version 4.3.4. Now let's add Notepad++. Click the big plus icon. Here you can install an application from the list or add one manually. You can specify what you want to see in the list first and then refresh it. Not everything is visible, I've noticed, so just search for Notepad. This is an installation template for Notepad++ that we are going to use. The current release is version 8.7.1, We can download this manually and then feed it into the template, but for now I will use everything default as a first step. Click install to start. A couple of warnings appear that we should follow. The most important one is that there is only a C drive by default, so don't install on anything else than the C drive. By default, every Windows application in PlayOnLinux will have their own virtual hard drive. You will see this in a minute, but it is also configurable to have a shared hard drive between various Windows applications. We will leave all the defaults in place, but there are many possibilities to customize the configuration. Read it, and if you want, select Don't Remind Me Anymore and click Next. Another warning, if you will, to read and accept. Every Windows application in PlayOnLinux will have their own underlying version of Wine, but don't worry about that too much. Let's continue. Now the actual PlayOnLinux installation wizard for Notepad++ starts. Click Next. The virtual drive is being created, and the specific version of Wine is downloaded and installed. All of this is happening automatically. As mentioned before, but just to reiterate, keep in mind that a lot of things will be installed or run for the first time when setting it up initially. Things like .NET runtimes, Microsoft fonts, etc. and so forth will only need to be installed once. Your next Windows application will go faster. Just click Accepting and install what is required. In this case that is Wine Mono, Wine Gecko, and the Microsoft fonts. Now you get to select your version of Notepad++ to install. You can specify a setup file that you have downloaded earlier to get to the latest version, or simply click Download the program. That's what I select, but that will most likely not be the latest version. And finally we get to see what we would see on Windows as well. Just follow the installer like you would for any Windows program, pretending at this point you are on a Windows machine. Most of the times that will be clicking Next a few times and then Finish. I will leave all the defaults, remember to install only on the C drive, and I don't want to create a desktop shortcut, because PlayOnLinux will already do so for me. Also uncheck Run Notepad. Click Finish when done. And there you have it. PlayOnLinux configured the virtual drive for you, took care of Wine in the background, and created a desktop shortcut. Also it included an entry in PlayOnLinux, and it has been added to the menu. You can start any application straight from the menu or desktop shortcut, or manage it in more detail from within the PlayOnLinux application. But you don't need to do this. When you start working with it, the usage of PlayOnLinux is transparent to the end user, and it is happening very much in the background. Let's run it from PlayOnLinux first, by selecting it and clicking Run. And there it is. No difference between Windows 11 and Linux. Let's close Notepad++ and also PlayOnLinux. From this point on, just start Notepad++, but now like you would with any other native Linux application. Now for the integration between the Windows applications in PlayOnLinux and your Linux distribution, if you were to save the file, you can see something that looks very much like Windows, with a My Computer icon and a C drive. This is the virtual hard disk and you can keep your files on there, but most likely you want to access the files from Linux Mint. For that, at the bottom the Linux file system is listed starting at the root level. Navigate to Home and then your Linux user to get to your documents. Alternatively, and ready to go, there also is a Z drive or Z drive under My Computer, and this is mapped directly to the Linux Mint file system. So simply saving files to the Z drive will make them available for Linux Mint straight away. As is often the case, there are multiple paths to the destination. When you now save the file, it will be accessible from the Linux file manager. Also, copy and paste will work seamlessly between your Windows applications in PlayOnLinux and Linux Mint itself. If you would like to play around with and customize the configuration in PlayOnLinux, go into the Configure section. Going into all of the configuration options is beyond the scope of this video, but you can, for example, change the version of Wine, customize the virtual drive, or on the Wine tab, interact with the Windows application like it is a real version of Windows. I am sure many of you will recognize regedit straight away. Now let's move on to the second example, where we will download a setup file ourselves and then feed it into PlayOnLinux. In this case, I would like to work with WinSCP to upload some files to an FTP server. The actual use case or the actual application doesn't really matter, just substitute this to your own situation. First download the installation packets. Then open PlayOnLinux and again click the plus icon to install a program. This time click install a non-listed program and the manual installation wizard will appear. Click next. We would like to install a program in a new virtual drive. Select it and click next. Type a name for the new virtual drive and click next. And let's leave all the defaults and click next once again. Select 32-bit version of Windows, that will do for this application. And of course click next again. The virtual drive is now being created and Wine will be configured like before. You will notice how much quicker it was this second time around. Now browse to the installation file you have downloaded earlier and click next. Just like before, from this point on, pretend you are on a Windows system and install the application like you would on Windows. Please keep in mind to not create desktop shortcuts, install it on the C drive, don't launch the application, and don't reboot the machine when asked. You can optionally select to create a desktop shortcut in Linux. I will do that for WinSCP. As I only need the one shortcut, I will select I don't want to make another shortcut this time and click next. And that's it. We are now at the same point like before with an installation package for a Windows application we have downloaded ourselves. Hopefully at this point you are now able to run simple Windows programs on Linux. It's all about managing expectations as stated. Trying to run Adobe Photoshop will be more involved, but you should be able to run simpler Windows applications and light games without too much effort. That's it. Hope it helped, and if it did, please like the video and keep it up. Until next time, bye!